Morning. It's great to be here. Great to be back. We were looking at how long it's been since we've been here. It's been 9 years since we were here. Just curious, who was here 9 years ago in the church? Okay, that's great. And a handful of you. So the rest of you, I don't know yet. And so my name's Adam Frankenstein. My wife Esther's down here. If you want to raise your hand. We have three boys. We left them in another country. We left them at home in El Salvador, and we flew in last night. We're flying back on Thursday. Just a real quick trip and but we try to kind of check and see churches we haven't been to in a while, and then I was like, whoops, it's been a really long time since we've been to visit this church. Pastor Troy came to visit us 11 years ago in El Salvador, and then we came here for the first time 2 years after that. But it's great to be here. Give a real quick overview of the ministries. Like Pastor mentioned, we've been in El Salvador for 13 years after a year of language school in Costa Rica, Spanish. And we have a church. We have a Christian school that was started over 60 years ago. Obviously not by me, but we've kind of revitalized that. It was having some about every issue you can imagine. It was a good-sized school, but we had problems with gang members. We had problems with finances. We had problems with the teachers weren't Christian, which is complicated in a Christian school. And so there's a lot of things that were not really going the right direction. We're seeing wonderful fruit from that now. We've got a good number of kids and just really having a good time with that. That's K4 through high school. And then we also have Bible College, which is a 4-year Bible program. And then we're seeing starting to see some fruit from that. We've had many graduates who are already out in ministry, and we're starting to see that number start to increase. We've got in our culture in El Salvador, how we're doing it, we have different graduations every year. There's first year graduation, second year graduation, and so we have someone who graduates from 4 years. That'll be their fourth graduation, but it's kind of it's accumulative. And so when you get to the fourth year, we've got several coming in, like 8 this time in the fourth year. Next month we'll have the graduation, and then about 8 or 10 in each of the other classes. Something maybe what is the second year is the stronger one, or first year. The second year graduates, there's a bigger number, and we've got graduates all over El Salvador, but also Honduras, Nicaragua, because we have the classes available online. They're in Spanish, and so seeing the Lord bless with that. And then actually, during the quarantine in 2020, we started Latin America Mission Board. There's several really good mission boards in the United States, but those are for U.S. citizens. And so it does not work the same for those who are going out of these churches in El Salvador and other countries into the rest of the world. There's not a mission board system. We are working with BIMI here in the States, and they helped us model a mission board down for Latin America. And so we currently have 9 missionaries there. We have missionaries from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, going to each of those countries. Also 1 missionary from Honduras going to Africa. And just it's neat to see the Lord working. I think that Latin America right now would be the second most fertile field in the world, second only to Philippines. I was in the Philippines last year. I plan to go there again this next year. That's amazing what the Lord's doing there, but that's kind of what's happening in Latin America. People are open, people are receptive to the gospel, and it's fun. I come back to the States, and when I go soul winning here in the States, I'm like, okay, then this is different. We can talk to anybody about the gospel anytime. People are happy to hear it. I may, maybe for every 200 tracts or invitations I hand out, I might find somebody who's not interested, but they'll be kind about it. To find somebody who's rude, I might have to wait a whole year to find somebody who's rude and kind of not interested. It's just a different culture. And so as I look out, I don't know every culture that's represented, but obviously there's several different cultures represented here. And some people have lived in LA your whole life. And at the hotel this morning, I was telling Esther, I said, this is so cool. I have no idea what all these people are saying. There's so many different languages all around me. I love it. In El Salvador, there's Spanish, and that's it. We don't have a lot of other things. We talk in English at home. We talk with some people in English. It's the second language. a struggle. You know, nobody's really fluent in English. It's just all Spanish. But we don't have a lot of other countries represented there. We don't have a huge amount of people going to El Salvador because everyone's like, why would you? But now we went through some really interesting times. We lived in El Salvador during the time that it was number one murder capital of the world per capita, and we were up in the top 10 for a good number of years. But now it's totally flipped, and we're for murder per capita, we're better than definitely in the United States, but pretty much all of the Americas, second only to Canada. And so it's a totally different thing. El Salvador is tiny. Yesterday we were in our couples conference. We were at the very north end of the country, 10 minutes from the border from Honduras, kind of up in the corner. We drove all the way down across the entire country to the airport, which was 3 hours. And so it's a tiny little country. The airport's right on the ocean. Literally, we went top to bottom of the whole country in 3 hours, and it's about the same width-wise. And that's at 45 miles per hour, not like we drive here in LA. And so it's a tiny little country, about 7 million people, and just seeing the Lord do some neat things. We're located in the center of El Salvador. And basically, we're also at the center of Central America. And the Lord has allowed us to have ministry in Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and kind of across all four countries there. We have really enjoyed it. Feel like we're just kind of getting started. Our boys are, Joel is 15 years old. Micah just turned 14 on Thursday, a couple days ago. And Isai is 10 years old. And so Isai was born in El Salvador. Joel, the first one, was born in California, in Lancaster. And then Micah was born in Costa Rica while we were in language school. So we have international family. It's literally a different process for paperwork for each of them. And so we enjoy that. But really home for us is El Salvador. People will ask me sometimes, so are you going home? I'm like, yeah, tonight. But I'm talking about El Salvador. I'm talking about where I live. And they're talking about the United States. I come to the United States to visit. It's fun. I have family here, but I come to visit. Home is El Salvador, and the Lord has really worked in our hearts there. We're going to look at a passage that's not often thought of ever, and definitely not for missions, but I think it's really applicable. Let's try to stick to English. Sorry about that. Haggai 1. Haggai 1. I'm going to try to stick with English. Who are my Spanish speakers in here? Do I have any Spanish speakers? I have one Spanish, too. Okay. Thank you. So if I start speaking in tongues, we need translation in order for it to be biblical. So I only know English and a little bit of Spanish, but I try to stick with one or the other. But I do a lot more preaching in Spanish than in English. Like I said, I come back to the States briefly, and I get nervous in English. My Spanish is my second language. I speak Spanish like a gringo, and it works out okay. But then I go back to the United States, and I speak English like somebody who's not from the United States. And so I'm somewhere in between the two languages. Thanks for being patient. And I'm using a bilingual Bible because I use both when I'm back in the States. So if I start reading the wrong version, just somebody raise your hand or something. We've got English and Spanish going on here. So we're in Haggai 1. And the title of the message is Working to Fill Bags with Holes or Investing in Souls for Eternity. Some of you are still looking for Haggai. It's in there. Don't discourage it. Old Testament. And so as we're thinking about this passage, it's really not known what's going on here. Most people, when you start getting to the minor prophets in the Bible, you're like, okay. And we kind of read it, and we read the whole chapter or the whole book, and maybe in one day, and we just kind of go on to the next minor prophet. And this morning, Esther and I reading together, we finished Amos, and then went into, what is it in English? Abdias, I don't know, what is it? Obadiah, thank you. And so, we read 2 books, this morning, and it's just easy to kind of skim over what's happening here in these minor prophets. And sometimes there's big lapses of time in between. Sometimes there's not a lot of context. And see about what's going on here. It gives us a timeline. It gives us some information. But when we really read what's happening, it starts to hit close to home. And so we want to do that. We want to let the Bible speak to us. So we're in Haggai 1:1. And I'll read, follow with your eyes there. It says Haggai 1:1. In the second year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the first day of the month came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet unto Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, This people say, the time is not come, the time to build the Lord's house should be built. The time that the Lord's house should be built. Then came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses? And this house lie waste? Now therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, Consider your ways, ye have sown much, and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but you are not filled with drink. Ye clothe ye, but there is none warm. He that earneth wages, that put it into a bag with holes. And that's where we're getting our title this morning. Verse 7, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Consider your ways. Go up to the mountain, and bring wood, and build the house. And I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord. Ye looked for much, and lo, it came to little. And when ye brought it home, I did blow upon it. Why, saith the Lord of hosts? Because of mine house that is waste. And ye run every man unto his own house. Therefore the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit. And I called for a drought upon the land, and upon the mountains, and upon the corn, and upon the new wine, and upon the oil, and upon that which the ground bringeth forth, and upon men, and upon cattle, and upon all the labor of the hands. So we're going into this story here. Give you a little context. We've got some of the children of Israel who are coming back to where they're from. They're coming back to their home country, but it's not really where they've ever lived. It's where they're from, but it's not where they've lived. But they're coming back to a land that's been devastated, to houses that have been destroyed, occupied sometimes even by enemies. And literally, they come back, and some of them have the rights to that property where they used to live or where their families used to live, but there's nothing there. They don't have a house to go back to. California, we have this problem of wildfires, and quickly it'll go through and just destroy a whole town or a whole small city, and people come back and they can use the map to find their address, but they're standing there on their street and they're like, I think this was my house, but it looks really different when there's no other houses or trees around. Everything's gone. So though they are still owners of that house, there's not a house there anymore. There's nothing to go back to. And really, even to start over is a huge amount of work. It's kind of that concept. They're going back to where they're from. They're going back to their home area, but they're not going back to a good situation. They're going back where they have no homes, they have no houses. The temple has been destroyed. They don't have a place to worship. And so as they go back after captivity, they go back to their home area. They're starting from zero, almost. I mean, it's nice when you have your own land, but you're starting to build. You're starting to figure out things. There's not clear land deeds and things like we would have today. There's just a lot of doubt, uncertainty. There's not a lot of people compared to the work that needs to be done. You can't just call the contractor because everybody there is in the same situation. We got nothing. So that's what they're coming back to. So what do you start with? Well, you start with, where are we going to sleep tonight and the next day? So you're kind of starting to build your own little house. And so as they all come back, the idea is, okay, everybody focus on your house, and then later we'll all get together and focus on God's house. The problem is time has passed. And it's not just they're looking for a place to sleep. They've made their lives and they still haven't got to God's house. And so when we go here to verses 2 and 4, we find, if you're taking notes, this would be number 1. When we put ourselves before God, that equals problems. When we put ourselves before God, that equals problems. When you go to verse 2, it says, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, this people say, the time has not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. In verse 4, it says, Is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste? Now, this word sealed is not a word that we use very often. And the idea with this is not just a simple structure. When you're talking about a overlaid with wood, similar to what you would do in a palace. Okay, so this is not just that they have a place to live. They have created a beautiful home for themselves to dwell in, but nobody has touched God's house. Nobody has done anything with God's priorities. And so their house is not just finished, their house is nice. There are lots of different levels of houses in Southern California. I lived here in Lancaster for 6 years. My dad worked down in the LA area as a contractor for 3 or 4 years, and though I was working in Lancaster, I would on my days off and things come down and help him or bring him materials, and I'd go to some of these houses, and my dad would say, "Oh yeah, this is about a $4 million house, and I'm doing $100,000 of woodwork on the inside of the house." That house was fine before he got there, but he's doing $100,000 of improvement on a good house. And I'm thinking, $100,000 of improvement, it's a lot of improvement. He's like, yeah, it's mostly just trim and cabinets. I'm thinking, that's a lot of improvement. This is what's going on here. These are houses that are already nice, and now they're now decked out. They're totally complete. And God's house is still it's destroyed. It's still sitting as it was when they arrived. The idea was everybody find a place to live, take care of your family for now, and then we're going to get together, we're going to build God's house. And life happens. People get busy, and just God gets put to one side. And so when we see focus on us instead of God or before God, we're going to have problems. So now they have their houses, now they have their farms, now they have these areas where they're cultivating, and they're not just surviving, they're thriving. And God says, well, we'll just take care of that for you. Let me help you remember where all these good things come from. And so he starts to restrict the water. Well, if you live in California very long, you realize water's a luxury here. It's an important thing. And you've got to take care of the little fishes up the river somewhere, and so you got to redirect all your water, and there's all kinds of things going on, and people are like, but I still need water. And you drive up to Northern California, you're like, oh wow, this is where they used to have all these grapes, and now what do they do with this property? And we realize the importance of water, and God says, okay, you don't remember about me? I'll just cut off your water supply a little bit. Literally, there's going to be no dew. Literally, there's no rain. All of your hard work in cultivating and planting and trying to harvest is not going to produce fruit because you've forgotten about me. And God says, hey, I'm ready to receive you. I'm ready to help you, but you have forgotten about me. Let me just make a few things obvious here. I'm still in control, is what God says. And so we have this problem that we're putting ourselves before God, and that's only going to result in problems. It's very, very, very typical when somebody kind of gets off into their new part of life. And I know all about migration. We've had tons of families have left El Salvador to go to the United States. There's more Salvadorians that live in the United States than live in El Salvador. It's a thing. But, they leave the church and say, we're going to go up here, Pastor. Or sometimes they don't say anything. They just say, hey, yeah, I'm in Texas. And, okay, what are you doing there? Well, I just thought I'd start over. Oh, okay. Was there something wrong with your current life? I noticed your wife and kids were here. Like, what's up with them? No, they'll be okay. I'm just going to get some money. And then you'll see, I'll be a witness here in Texas. Okay. 10 years later, hey, so how's it going? Yeah, I still haven't found a good church here. Really? No good churches in all the United States. That's incredible. Why haven't you found a good church? Well, with my job, I'm working 3 jobs and, just trying to get by. And you think, so, okay. So you've separated your family. You're doing the same thing in another country you were doing here. You're working a lot. And you're finding out that it's not what you're looking for. You're still feeling dissatisfied. And people go looking for the American dream. And it depends on what part of the country you're in is what the American dream is. But the idea is you have your own house, you have more cars than you do drivers, and then you've got your little fence and you've got your little dog, and you don't have any problems in the whole world because either you have a lot of debt or a lot of money, and either way, it's all good. And somehow that just doesn't seem to work. Because depression rate in the United States has continued to climb with the economy. And when the economy goes down, the depression rate can. And when the economy goes back up, the compression rate continues to climb. Poor people, rich people, they're having the same problems. And you think, so maybe money's not the issue. And you look at the suicide rate, and then there's a higher suicide rate with people who have had at some point, or maybe still currently, affluency. They had enough money, more than what they needed, but they're still looking for something else, and they find that they can't find it. What they're looking for is actually God. They just don't know it, and they're waiting for somebody to tell them. But you find these problems all over the world. The countries with the highest suicide rates are the countries with the most money. So maybe money is not actually the answer. And so you have the children of Israel, though they're grateful to be back home. They're grateful to be out of captivity. Now they've got their own little houses, and now they make them nice. So they're not just surviving, they're thriving. And then they've got their farms, and they've got their businesses, and God's house is still abandoned completely. It's not even empty. It's non-existent. It's just a pile of stones. And so you see this conflict, and you see it's just not going to work out. In your notes, number 2, when we try to be satisfied with the things of this earth, it will equal frustration. When we try to be satisfied with the things of this earth, it equals frustration. Verses 5 and 6. Now, therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Now, that phrase, consider your ways, comes up several times in this passage. When we see something repeated in the Bible, it's repeated for a reason. And God is telling the children of Israel here, He's telling them what the problem is your direction, the way you're doing things. You need to make a change in order to see, again, the blessings from God. And so He says, consider your ways. Verse 6, ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but you are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. Very frustrating. And some of us can relate to this 100%. There's not enough money, so we pick up a second job. And then the car dies going to the second job, or falling asleep because we can't stay awake after working the second job. We crash the car. Now we need more money to pay for another car to get to both jobs. And now it's just a problem. It's a cycle. And it doesn't matter how hard we work, we're not getting ahead. When I was in high school in Ohio, where I grew up, I worked construction. And started working construction at 13 years old and doing roofing, and it would just kind of happen. A guy in our church had a roofing company. He got a big job changing shingles on a garage for semi-trucks. You could park 40 trailers inside this in the garage. I mean, a pretty good-sized building. And he said, man, I need all hands on deck. So he called my dad and called my brother and my older brother. And then he said, hey, well, what about the twins? I'm a twin. And we were 13 years old. And he said, hey, can they come work too? We need grunts. Well, I mean, sure, I wanted money. And my dad's like, hey, yeah, put them to work. It's fine. My dad wasn't able to go, but he said, yeah, I'll put these guys to work. It'll work out fine. So we go, and when we get there, this thing about if you got a garage that you can put semi-trailers into, it's really high. So we're about 50 feet up in the air on our first job. And we get up there, and the boss is telling us all these things about how to not fall off the roof. If we fall off the roof, we're fired, and we were never there. Find our own way to the hospital. I'm like, man, this guy is full of compassion. And roofing is terrible work. Has anyone ever done roofing, shingling and stuff? It's terrible. You're in the sun. You've got this funny little shovel, and you got to pull out like 20 million nails. And then you got to pull up these shingles. They're very heavy. You got to get them off the roof into a dump truck. And if it falls stuff on the ground, you got to go around and pick it all up later. And so you're always bending over. And so you're in the sun, no protection. It's hot. It's hard work. Hey, but the pay was good, and I didn't care. And so if I was making money, it was all great. So we ended up doing that all the way through high school, my twin and I. And I was basically the grunt the whole time, which means I did all the not fun stuff. I carried all the materials. I cleaned up all the old shingles. I'd go to the store to get more stuff. And I was the guy who, you don't put you on the straight line. You just put you working hard, and you get paid less than the other guys who are smarter. And so that was kind of like my range the whole way through high school. So I did that. I enjoyed that. Did that while we were doing high school. We were homeschooled. And so depending on how many jobs we had, if we had maybe 2 or 3 days of work in the week, which was plenty to live off of, but we didn't have any expenses. So, I mean, life was good. We had cash in pocket. School was, we were homeschooled. So mom said, okay, if you're going to work Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, school. Yeah, you don't need school. I mean, look, we've got $100 in the pocket. Why would we possibly need better education? Look what we can already do. Fortunately, she insisted, and we continued with our schooling, but we'd just be flexible. We started picking up work, and we had more jobs, and Lord was blessing this business. And the owner was a Christian. He was tithing off of this business. Things were going well for all of us. And then we'd had a hailstorm come through, and we've got about 100 jobs to do in 2 months. Well, that's nice, except when you're going to do school. And so we started working hard, and we would start on the job site at 5 a.m. and we'd work till we finished. Sometimes that'd be 8, 9, 10, 11 at night. We just put up lights, and we'd get a bonus if we finished in the same day. Well, we wanted the bonus. And so we would just show up and we'd work, and we didn't have anything else to do. I mean, what do? You're a teenager, you have no social life, and this is just, there's money involved. So I'm like, yeah, we're all in. And so then we're doing school at night or doing school some other time, and Saturdays, whenever. But we kept up because mom said, the week you fall behind on school, you're both fired. Well, that means no more money. So my brother was much faster, is still much faster with schooling. I had to work at it much harder. But my mom was serious. If we didn't keep up, we were done. And so we kept up, and we graduated on time, and so we kind of had that schedule of just kind of doing whatever. I got to California and got behind on my school wheel and got injured at work and couldn't get another job, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, wow, just to graduate from Bible college, I've got to come up with a lot of money. So when I kind of recovered, I got injured at Lowe's and hurt my knee and my back, and so as I recovered, I started jobs, and I was working 2 or 3 jobs at a time and never sleeping, and just it didn't matter how hard I worked, I would still have something else come up. And so I would finally get a good job, and some mechanic jobs make money right away. Some of them are a little longer, and I wasn't a good mechanic. I would just do simple stuff, changing brakes, battery starters, stuff that people are scared of doing. And I didn't know what I was doing either, but someone said, hey, I'll pay you $20 if you change the brakes in my car. For $20, I'd do anything, and so I started, doing some of that stuff. And then as going through this, I finally I'm going to go and make a payment. And I had enough money. I was going to pay off my school bill. I said, this is going to be the year I'm going to take finals on time. I've got the money in my hand. Tomorrow morning, I'm going in to make the payment. Tomorrow morning, my face is like this big because I've got a problem with my tooth. And I go into the dentist. He's like, oh, yeah, that'll be $500. And I'm like, man, well, there goes my school bill. Now I miss work, and that affects man. And that happened to me 3 times where I had something come up like the week of finals. And I'm like, why? I'm working so hard, and I'm not getting it. I had some wonderful counselors. One of them comes up to me. He said, have you ever thought about asking God to help you with some of this stuff? Well, yeah, obviously, I'm at Bible college. Of course, I'm praying for this. He's like, no. You're working for it. You're trying to do it in your own strength, and it's not working out. You need to just put this off on God because He's not first. You're trying to pay your school bill. You're trying to get through Bible college, but God is not first in your life. Well, that's a little hard to hear, but it was true. And you think, wow, okay, well, I'm working really hard, but it's not bringing anything to fruition. I have nothing to show for it. So we've got a visual this morning. I like doing visual things. I'm going to rearrange the church while I'm here, just because, I'm only here for a day, so. Okay, so we have water. These are pretty large things for water. The hotel donated a cup for the cause today. And so, obviously, the amount of water that's here is superior to the amount of water that will fit inside of this cup. And so, what we try to do in the Christian life is knowing Christ, having the preaching every week, reading our Bible, but we have this idea, the harder I work, the more God will bless. But that's not necessarily true, because then it doesn't work that way. So we start to, put in our job, we start to get our extra degree, We start to pick up the second job and we say, there's got to be a way that this will work out. But I'm coming up empty. I don't have enough. It's not working. And so we say, well, let's sell some of the kids. Let's, sell off the extra car. Let's look for some other way to get some extra money. I'm kidding, okay? Some of you are like, oh, that's a great idea. No, it's not a great idea, okay? And so I said, man, we got to work harder. We got to do more. We got to somehow make this come out. And God says, what about me? Because we can keep trying and trying and trying, but we're ending up empty. I mean, there's a couple of drops in here, but basically, if somebody wants to drink this, you're going to end up thirsty. It's not going to work. And you say, well, more education, more work. We got to do something. We're gonna really just push through. It'll work out okay. We've really given everything we have, and then when we're looking at our life, we're like, I've got nothing to show for it. I mean, I've been dumping and dumping. I dumped an entire pitcher of water into a 6-ounce cup. Here we go. That's what I have. Because no matter how hard we try, it's not enough. Because God's not first. And so these people, they have their houses. They're sealed houses. They're fancy. They're snazzy. Cool English word. And they've got their fancy houses. And their gardens are dry. God says, you know the problem? It's because you forgot about me. So you can have your house. You can have your cars. You can have your education. But what about me? And God says, okay, well, I'm going to start putting the squeeze on here until you remember about me. We should cut off the water supply for a little bit. Most of us, we live in the city and we think food comes from Walmart or, Amazon, whatever. You just go online and it just shows up at your door. It actually is grown. There's a process somewhere. There may be some farmers here, probably not. This is a very city area. But there are farmers working in other places, so we have food on our plate. And when you don't have water, you don't have life. And God says, I'll cut off the water. You guys need to remember about me. We need to remember that that you need me. And so when we try to be satisfied with the things of this earth, we're going to have frustration. When we flew in last night, we're at the airport and we're just waiting for just a few minutes. And I'm looking at the cars going by. Some of them I've never seen before. And some of them I'm like, wow, those are fancy cars. And I like cars. I like fancy cars. I like fast cars, expensive cars, all of them. Any kind of car that's probably not attainable, I want 2 or 3 of them. I think they're great. I like them. And so I'm looking at all these cars. Esther could care less. Her favorite car is the one she's riding in currently. It doesn't really matter. And she's, I may ask her, hey, what do you think about this car? She's like, well, it's fine. We're moving. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? And I'm like, no, and it's got this many cylinders, and it's got this nice motor, and there's version with turbo, and she's all like, wonderful. I mean, do they all go? I mean, because that's kind of what they're for, right? They're just supposed to go from here to there. And so we see all these fancy cars. I see this Uber driver come up, and he's driving an Escalade. I have no idea what year it was, but it was pretty new, and it was fancy. We have 0 Escalades in El Salvador, like 0. I've seen 2 Cadillacs in the entire country. You don't have them. There's no parts. There's no market for them. They're big. They use a lot of gas. They just work in our country. And I see this Escalade pull up, and I'm like, look, Esther, that's an Uber car. And she's like, nice. And you open the door, and it's got like LED lights all the way around the floorboard and all the way around the top. And it was like snazzy. And it had like 3 layers of leather on the seats. I just saw as somebody was getting in right in front of me. I'm like, yeah, that's nice. I'd ride in that, if I had to. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of investment in just one thing that one person with a $100 car could wreck into and really mess up your day. And you know what? That car will ruin just like every other car. But they all do. A couple years ago, a little over a year ago, we finally got our dream truck. And it was awesome for 2 days. And it broke down. And that was like $500. And then the 3 days later, after finally getting it fixed, a week, so we had it for 2 days, it was down for a week. $500 repair that we did ourselves. It would have been much more having done somewhere else, and couldn't find a mechanic to work on it. And so 2 days later, it breaks again, another $500. I just spent all my money buying the truck. And I told Esther, I said, this isn't how this was supposed to go. So we, fixed that thing for a year and sold it. And, lost all that extra money we had spent fixing it up for somebody else. I thought, man, whatever we get out of this thing is a blessing. I just got to get out from under it. This dream truck, I walk everywhere because we have a dream truck. Forget it. This thing's not awesome. It was great when it ran, but it stopped running. Everything in life is like that. Remember the first smartphone you had? Remember that? Remember the first time you broke your smartphone? Oh, life has come to an end. Now you couldn't even sell that smartphone for $50. You couldn't give it away. I had the iPhone 3G, like when it was old. I think it was probably 4 or 5 years old at that time. I bought it in pieces, put it together, and I was like, wow, I have an iPhone. That phone is absolutely worthless right now. If you can get it to turn on, it doesn't work. There's no software that works with it. Nobody's looking to buy those things, except maybe a collector. I literally have one. That same phone is disassembled in my at my house because the screen broke again for like the 7th time, and there was no more parts for it. Nobody sells them. I go, well, I'll keep it as a collector. One day, I'm going to sell that thing for to somebody who likes to collect these things. It's worthless. People were killing each other for the first iPhone. Literally, I couldn't get $5 out of it now anywhere in the world. It's worthless. Everything in this world is temporary. When we go to our notes, number 3, when we put God first, that equals favor with and from God. When we go down to verse 7, it says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Verse 8, go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord. Now, they're going to go up to the mountain. That requires work. Who's paying for them to go up to the mountain? Nobody's paying for that. You don't just go get wood in the mountain. Now, I understand we're in the city. Some people may not realize it. Wood comes from trees. Trees are actually still standing. You got to cut them down. You got to put them into the right. This is all hand tools. I like carpentry. I like doing stuff. I like everything with a motor. I do not like hand tools. I have a hand saw. It's rusty. I never use it. I use everything electric that I can because I'm lazy. They did not have those things. They've got to go down the tree, take off the branches, cut it to length, depending on what they want, and then they got to bring it back down from the mountain. This is hard work. And God says, hey, you don't have anything else going on right now. All of your crops have died. Remember me? The giver of life. So since you're not doing anything for me right now, we're going to stop your entire life. You found wood for your houses, but you haven't been able to find wood for the temple of God. So God says, let me help you. Go up to the mountain. Everybody's doing their own sacrifice. Everybody's going up there. They're sweating. And they do it. We find so many times in the Bible the children of Israel do not obey. In Haggai, they did. They stopped their lives. They said, we have left God out. What have we done? And they went up to the mountain. They cut down the trees. They turned it into usable wood. They bring it down. They construct the temple, and then they work on it. And then they obeyed. And God says, okay, I can work with that. So we go to the next chapter, Haggai 2:21. In response to their obedience, God, speaking of the governor, of the leader of this group, he's talking about how this guy God's going to take good care of him. In Haggai 2:21, speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms. I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heaven. I will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and their riders shall come down, and every one by the sword of his brother. And that day, saith the Lord of hosts, I will take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and I will make thee as a signet, for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts. Why did he choose him? Why did he say he was going to go to battle for him? Why did he say that he would just take care of everything? Because he obeyed. And it wasn't first, but when God calls it his attention and said, what about me? They said, okay, you're right. We need to change that. We need to fix that. And they did. Rearranged their life and God became first. And when they put God first, literally the heavens opened and they had rain again. And God says, don't worry about your army. You don't need one. I'll take care of it. You guys just worry about your plants now. Now that you're focused on me and your free time, you can work on the stuff for surviving, and that won't be hard. There'll be abundance. And I'll take care of your security too. Well, that's a pretty good deal. God says, focus on me. I'll take care of your needs. I'll take care of your security. You don't have to worry about anything as long as I'm the focus, says God. And it's so easy for us to put everything else in front of God. As a pastor, I am very conscious of how easy it is for people to miss services. The same guy who says, I haven't missed a day of work in 47 years. Sunday morning, man, Pastor, I've got a headache today. I'm not going to be able to make it to services. You've had a headache for 6 months, and you haven't missed a single day of work. Yeah, but I'm not feeling up to church today. Oh, okay. Got it. Look, Pastor, having a little thing with my eyelashes. They're a little sore today. I'm not going to be able to sing in the choir. Oh, okay. Be careful with that. That could be serious. Pastor, I looked down and saw some of my hair had fallen out and was on the floor. I won't be in church today. Okay. How was the time of your sweet time with the Lord? Did you enjoy that Bible reading this morning? Did you enjoy that prayer time? Well, Pastor, I've been so worried about that falling hair. I really had time for God. What happens? Suddenly, anything else becomes a priority. Look, I've got a debt I can't pay. Just working on that. Let me know how it goes. 6 months later, I don't know what to do. I'm working and working and working. I picked up a job on Sundays. I picked up a job. I'm not going to make a church anymore. I don't have time for Bible reading anymore. Pastor, I'm so tired. Okay, well, enjoy that. I know how that's going to go for you. There is no end as long as God's not the focus. When God becomes the focus, he says, hey, don't worry about it. He promises to take care of our needs. Now, are there a lot of things people spend money on that aren't a need? But God says, I will take care of your needs. I'll give you everything you need as long as God's first. Well, our problem is we want to be first and have everything we need. God says, does it work that way? I am your provider. Because otherwise, you're just trying to fill a bag with holes in it. And as we try to fill those bags with holes in them, we realize at the end of our lives, what have we done for Christ? There's millions of people around us who need the Lord. Praise the Lord for new churches that are starting. But boy, we need a lot of them. Praise the Lord for the people who are being saved. But boy, that's not enough. We have so much to do to reach people with the gospel. So are we trying to fill bags with holes in them? Or are we focusing on the things that will last for eternity? I don't want you to answer, but I want you to think about it. When was the last time that you personally shared the gospel with somebody? When was the last time that you personally saw somebody repent before loving God and receive full forgiveness of sin? That should be common for us. Because that's why we're here. We don't exist to move up the ranks in our different jobs. We don't exist just to get a higher education and maybe even higher pay with that, though oftentimes you can get a higher education without getting a pay raise. Well, that's not why we exist. We exist to glorify God and share his love with others. That's why we're here. And we don't know how long we'll be here. I've done hundreds of funerals as a pastor, hundreds. All ages. The oldest person I've done a funeral for was 100 years old. I did a funeral for a baby who breathed for about 30 seconds. And everything in between. We do not know about tomorrow. A beautiful song this morning. But we do know who holds tomorrow. But we do need to realize we have work to do. And we can get so distracted with the things of this world. We've got our sealed houses. We've got our luxuries. And God's like, okay, so what about me? When do I become a priority? And until God is a priority in our lives, we will continue to be frustrated that we just can't fill the bag with holes in it. No matter how hard we work now, no matter how hard we try, we're not going to have enough because God is the one who desires this. We don't have time to look at all the passages, but if you want to write in your notes to look up in Malachi, it's a parallel passage in talking about the same thing. God promises to provide the blessings of heaven, promises to provide the security if God is first. And we go over to 2 Corinthians. I do want to look there, 2 Corinthians 9:6. But this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly. And he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Every man according as he purposes in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound towards you, that ye, always having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work. You want to know how to have enough in life? Focus on God and let him take care of everything else. It works. This church has been supporting missions for a long time. I really don't know how many years and how many missions dollars that represents. I know it's a lot. And you could look all over the world and see that what the Lord has done with that. That is something that lasts for eternity. That's something that you can say, this has made a difference. But sometimes we're so focused on the temporal things, we don't remember about people going to hell. And we don't remember about things about reaching others with the gospel. We need to focus on the permanent, on the eternal. That's what God has for us. So the question's really simple this morning. If you're honest before God, is your life the story of trying to fill an empty bag, a bag with holes in it? Just going in circles? Or are you investing in eternity? Obviously, God wants us to invest in eternity. We'll have heads bowed and eyes closed. I'll ask Pastor to come and lead the invitation. But as Pastor's coming, I want to ask you this question. Are you living today in a way that will make a difference for eternity? Are you ready, first of all, to see God? Are you saved? And secondly, are you helping others to know and follow Christ? Pastor, please come with the invitation.